Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Catherine Tercer. I'm the Policy Analyst for Common Cause Ohio, and it is my pleasure to introduce the State Treasurer, Josh Mandel. Now, I have to be completely transparent here. The Treasurer and I have not always seen eye to eye. He's a Republican. I'm not. And, I'm a government watchdog, so I'm occasionally critical. So when Josh Mandel called me, this was more than a year ago, and he called my cell, and I was like, I thought it was a prank. And I was like, who's having fun, right? Who's having a little bit of fun with me, right? But then he began to roll out his vision for the State Checkbook. And that was the point that I was hooked. And he's going to walk you through it, give you lots of good details, and you'll have some visuals, yes? You'll have some visuals so you can actually see it. And I've described it as the best thing since sliced bread. But you should all know, the one thing I want you all to know is this is one of the best tools that I have seen for creating sunlight in state finances. Now, we are very blessed to live in a time period in which we can actually follow the inner workings of government, if it's online and available, in the middle of the night, at home. We might even be in our pajamas, but it has to actually be created. And that vision of a truly transparent Ohio is one that the Treasurer and I share. Treasurer Mandel's leadership helped increase Ohio's transparency ranking from 46th in the nation to number 1. I know. And before you go too far, this ranking was established by the U.S. PIRG, Public Interest Research Group, that was created by that wonderful consumer advocate, a guy named Ralph Nader. Now, open government, good access to information is obviously good for all Ohioans. And I really just wanted to highlight how this type of project brings together the left, the right, and those people that are truly independent and don't see themselves as either a Republican or a Democrat. Now, I also wanted to highlight something else that I was really moved by, because I talk a lot about the importance of open government and the importance of just not seeing the world as left or right or chocolate or vanilla. Let's work on solutions and let's think about functional government. I was very moved when your former rival, who was also the treasurer at one point, Representative Kevin Boyce, came out and said that he, too, supported the checkbook, that he said that this was something that was important for us all to embrace. Now, when former rivals can come together, you know it's a good thing. Now, y'all probably need to have a little bit of history of Josh Mandel. You might know already, but I'm going to go through it anyway. So here's a little bit about Josh. He is the 48th treasurer of the state of Ohio. He is, in fact, the youngest treasurer in the United States, which naturally makes me feel a bit old. He was elected in 2010 and then reelected last year. He is somebody who served his country well. He was in the Marine Corps. He's a veteran, and he did 2 tours in Iraq. He also spent some time in that battlefield they call the Ohio House. And on that note, I'd like us all, ladies, gentlemen, members, and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, to welcome my friend, Josh Mandel.
All right, good afternoon. I appreciate the invitation from Dan and the board, and appreciate everyone having me here to speak today. What I thought I'd do is talk to you a little bit about what we've done with government transparency and ohiocheckbook.com, why we did it, and then, as is the tradition here, open it up to as many questions as you'd like to ask. We also, we're going to have an opportunity to take this website for a spin, so I'll show you how it works and encourage you to go back to your local elected officials in your communities to ask them to participate as well. As Catherine mentioned, one of the nice things about this transparency initiative is that it's blind to partisanship. With all the unfortunate bickering and infighting we definitely have in our nation's capital, and unfortunately also in many state capitals throughout this country, this is one of those refreshing issues that actually brings people together across the political spectrum. So I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Vegetarian, what have you, this is one of those issues that is really blind to partisanship. The reason I took over $470 billion of state spending and put it on the internet is very simple. I believe the taxpayers of Ohio have a right to know how their tax money is being spent. And I think one of the best ways to help make government more efficient and also limited in size and scope is to empower taxpayers to hold politicians accountable. And so transparency for transparency's sake, in my mind, doesn't really mean much. The ultimate goal here is accountability. It's empowering everyday citizens to hold politicians accountable. We started this journey about 2 years ago when I went to my staff and I said, you know, our ranking nationally is nothing to brag about. No one in Ohio is really doing anything, so why don't we do something about this lackluster transparency ranking in our state? So my staff started to work on an initiative to put the state's checkbook online and started to begin also at that time to understand how difficult a task this would be. It took us around 18 months to build OhioCheckbook.com, and sometime around last summer we were getting close to being done. My staff said, hey, I think we're ready to launch. And I said, well, if we're ready to launch, why don't we go to some folks in the private sector and have them come in and break it? Because one of the lessons learned from the website of the Healthcare Act nationally was if you're not ready to actually launch a government website with billions of pieces of financial data, then don't launch it. And so we hired some outside folks, brought them in to actually stress test it and try to compromise it and break the thing. After we went through that process and exercise, it's probably sometime around last fall, my staff said, hey, I think we're ready to launch this thing. And there were some folks out there who thought it might be a good time to launch it because it was close to the re-election I was encountering for my state treasurer position. And I said to these folks, well, listen, I got a better idea. Instead of launching it before the election, why don't we wait till after the election? That way no one could ever make the case, albeit false, that this has anything to do with politics. And so we waited until December of last year, about a month after election, and launched OhioCheckbook.com, which now sets a new national standard for government transparency. What you're about to see includes over $473 billion of state spending, over 4 billion pieces of individual information. Expenditures, everything from $2 for a pack of pencils to millions of dollars for road expenditures and everything in between. And as I think you'll see, it's presented in a way that's easy to search and navigate by everyday citizens. You don't have to be a computer science major at Case Western Reserve in order to navigate OhioCheckbook.com. It's really intuitive to the basic computer user. So rather than rambling on and on about this, I thought the better way to speak about it is to show it to you. And I know the tradition of the City Club is one of interaction with public officials and the audience. And so rather than just taking it for a spin of my own, why don't I just start calling on volunteers to help me take this thing for a spin. So there's 3 ways to search OhioCheckbook.com. One is by state agency. You can see what the EPA is spending, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Health, Department of Education. Another way to search spending is by vendor. So if you want to see what ABC Construction or XYZ Consulting is spending with the state government, you can see that. And a third way to search is by categories of spending, travel, office equipment, legal services, what have you. So why don't we start off by searching for a state agency, and I'll show you how this works. So do I have a volunteer that can maybe shout out an agency in state government? All right, mental health addiction? Okay. So what is your name, ma'am? All right, so Pam asked us to search for mental health addiction. As you'll see, this has a Google-style contextual search bar. And so when they start just typing into the search bar, just the word mental, you can see all the different agencies or types of expenditures that may include that word. The first agency that comes up is the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, which I think is what Pam was talking about. So why don't you click on that? What you're looking at here is a pie chart of the $605 million that this agency spent last year. Every single chart you see on this website, ohiocheckbook.com, is interactive, so you can keep drilling down and drilling down and drilling down. As you'll see here, the $605 million is broken down into a variety of different types of expenditures, personal services, capital items, maintenance, travel, equipment. Why don't you click on equipment? So you see last year this agency spent about $282,000 on equipment. And it breaks down the different types of equipment. So you see here in this case office equipment, construction and ag and groundskeeping equipment, laundry cleaning equipment, recycling equipment, information technology. Why don't you click on office equipment? Do I have a pointer? Thanks. So this shows you last year this agency spent about $4,700 on office equipment. And you can scroll down and actually see the expenditures. So you see here the 3 expenditures they made for office equipment. You can click on one of the checks. And there's the actual check. So this check you're looking at has over 30 pieces of individual information. You have the agency that expended the money. You have the date. You have the company, in this case APG Office Furnishings. If you look down at the bottom here, you have where this company is located. This one is in Cincinnati, Ohio. In the memo section, you have what was it for, in this case office equipment. And then you also have contact information for the person at the agency. Let's say you wanted to find out a little bit more information about this expenditure. You could call or email this person at that state agency and ask them. As you might imagine, that's made me a lot of friends in Columbus. But it is what it is. In my mind, this is all public information. The information doesn't belong to the government. The information belongs to you. We're simply the stewards. And so what we're doing here is taking billions of dollars of spending, hundreds of billions of dollars of spending, and putting it in a format, using technology really to put it in a format that's easy for you to search and see. And what we've reminded both politicians at the elected level and bureaucrats deep in the bureaucracy is that this information belongs to we the people, not to the agencies. If you want to dig a little deeper, you can click on this item that says, where's the money coming from? And this actually shows you what's called the appropriation line item, meaning when the state legislature, do we have any legislators here in the audience? Nan Baker there in the back, and I saw John Eklund left. So when Representative Baker from Westlake passed the state budget last year, or in this case 2 years ago, it'll actually show you the appropriation line item. In this case, it was for hospital operating expenses. And so this includes every single expenditure appropriated by the General Assembly over the past 8 years. This is updated. It includes information updated as of up to July 1st of 2015 this year. So this thing, I see Representative Davila here in the front row as well. It's updated up through about a month and a half ago. So if you want to share this check, we also created a function, a share function. Let's say you want to put it on Facebook or Twitter, email it to your friends. You can do that as well. Again, a good way for me to make friends in Columbus. Winning hearts and minds in the state agencies. Why don't you click out of this? So you look at this pie chart. You see that this agency spent $4,700 this fiscal year on office equipment. Context is a very important variable here. Is that a lot or is that a little? And so we created a compare function here where you can click compare and compare it to other state agencies. So I'm going to, if you can please just select some random agencies. So this compares mental health and addiction services expenditures in respect to office equipment to, looks like a bunch of other agencies: natural resources, public safety, taxation, veteran services, youth services. This gives you a 1-year look back. If you want to take an 8-year look back, you can click year to year. And this will take you back 8 years and show you what each of these agencies spent. As I mentioned earlier, every one of these charts, every one of these graphs is dynamic, so you can keep clicking and drilling down. So if you want to click on, let's say, looks like one of these is an outlier, you can click on one of these bars. And this will take you into the spending for, for this specific agency. So that's one way to search here on OhioCheckbook.com by state agency. Another way, if we go back to the main homepage, is searching by vendor. So I don't know if someone wants to shout out a vendor that you think might do business with state government. Okay. I don't know. We can try to type it in. I don't know if it'll come up on here. I don't know if they do business with the state government. The lady mentioned White Hat. So they do not come up on here. So they don't do business with the state government as far as what the General Assembly appropriates. Pardon me? Morton Salt. That one I bet we'll find. All right. So he just starts typing in Morton. Yep. And you see a Morton Salt. So he'll click that. Why don't you click on one of those bars? My guess is probably with the Department of Transportation or Department of Natural Resources. This is a month by month for FY. This looks like 2011. Why don't you click on that larger one? And this shows you all the expenditures from the Ohio Department of Transportation in this fiscal year 2011 with Morton Salt. You can search this by amount. You can sort it by amount. So if he sorts by amount, you can see the largest expenditures. You click on that. And as you see in the memo section, this was for chloride salt for the Ohio Department of Transportation, which was obviously used for clearing off snow on the roads during the wintertime. Another way you can search here on OhioCheckbook.com is by type of expenditure. So I don't know if someone would want to shout out a type of expenditure. Travel, legal expenses. So the salaries actually have been online now for the past probably about 3 or 4 years. The Buckeye Institute, actually Greg Lawson, who's here from the Buckeye Institute, they were the pioneers in that respect, not my office, and they put state salaries online, I think, 2011 maybe, or 2010. So if you go to my main homepage, we can show you the state salaries. Right on my main homepage, there's a state salary search. Why don't you just type in Mary Smith? I'm sure there's I'm guessing there's a Mary Smith that works for the state government in Ohio. All right, looks like there's 3 of them. So one at Jobs and Family Services, one at Workers' Comp, and one in the Attorney General's office. And you can see what they're getting paid as far as salaries go. One of my pet peeves is when politicians and also other government workers use our tax money to go on lavish vacations and trips. And so if you wanted to, for instance, search in here for out-of-state conferences or out-of-state travel, that's one of the ways you can search. So if you click in the type into the search bar travel, it'll show you all the different expense types. And why don't you click one of the out-of-state ones or conference ones? So you can see here the pie chart, conference and meals, lodging, so on and so forth. You can click one of these. And it breaks it down, shows you a lot of the agencies that are spending money in this regard. And if you want to keep drilling and drilling and drilling, you can do that. If you wanted to search and see if anyone has stayed at, let's say, Disney resorts with your tax money, you can just type in Disney. Looks like this was FY 2011. Let's see who thought that was a good idea. Aha! The Department of Transportation. So this is And so the question we could ask is, listen, was there a Holiday Inn down the street? And so listen, this isn't about trying to make people look bad. This is about trying to change behavior among people in government. And I would argue that even if no one ever searched this website, it's a success in that it's already changing the behavior among people who work for you. Because our job as elected officials or as people who work in the bureaucracy, their boss is the 11.5 million people of the state of Ohio. My boss is the 11.5 million people of the state of Ohio. And so this is a way for you to hold us accountable. This empowers everyday citizens to hold us accountable. We're already hearing from people who work in state government that it's changing the way they spend money. It's making them think twice before they make certain expenditures. And so, in my mind, that's a success. Fortunately, we don't have zero searches. We have, I think, over 275,000 searches as of last week. And we're just getting started. The reason I say we're just getting started is that we have a couple initiatives ongoing to build on this. A lot of people in Columbus said, hey, Josh, good job. Mission accomplished. Move on to the next thing. And I said, no. We are just getting started. So my friend Mike DeVilla, who's sitting here in the front row, he introduced legislation to require future state treasurers to ensure that they kept this information online after I'm gone as state treasurer. His bill passed the House unanimously, recognizing the fact that people have a right to see this money. And one of the things that Catherine mentioned that I think needs to be focused upon is Kevin Boyce. You know, about 5 years ago, Kevin was the state treasurer. He and I ran against each other in a pretty heated state treasurer election. I ended up winning. 5 years later, he and I are grabbing coffee down in Columbus, and he said, you know, I just spoke on the floor of the House in support of your transparency bill. And I said, you know, I've heard that, thank you. And he said, I'm glad to work with you on this. And so I told him I was going to be up in Toledo doing a transparency announcement. And Kevin drove up to Toledo. And he and I stood there. And think about this for a second. 5 years ago, we were running against each other, beating each other up in this campaign. 5 years later, we're standing shoulder to shoulder at a podium just like this, announcing that the Toledo Public School District was going to be the first school district in the state of Ohio to put their finances online. And so you think about the power of this issue. It's one of those issues that I think just transcends partisan politics. It transcends the D and the R next to people's names. And so one of the reasons I say we're just getting started is because what you're looking at here is the state government information. I have this vision, though, to take the 3,962 local governments and school districts, big cities like Cleveland, big counties like Cuyahoga County. Is Jeff Mowry here? Jeff, stand up for a second. So Jeff is the, what's your title at Cuyahoga County? Chief Information Officer. So Jeff's the Chief Information Officer at Cuyahoga County. You know, we've been working, how long have we been working with you now? For a few months on trying to move the ball down the field to get Cuyahoga County's finances online. Hamilton County and Cincinnati was one of the first large counties to announce they're putting their finances online. The city of Cincinnati, Mayor Cranley down there, they announced they're going to put their finances online. Can anyone take a guess of the first county to volunteer to put their finances online? Not Cuyahoga. They're not up yet. We're getting there. How far are we, Jeff? Close. We're close. When do you think you guys are going to be ready to make an announcement? All right, soon. So, who would have guessed that Mahoning County, Youngstown, Ohio, where's Ralph Meacham? Ralph, stand up. So Ralph's the Republican county auditor in Mahoning County. I stood there with Ralph and 3 Democratic county commissioners announcing Mahoning County, Youngstown, Ohio, as the first county in the state of Ohio to put their finances online. And Ralph, along with his colleagues in the county commission there, should be applauded. Right next door in Lorain County, Matt Lundy, who I serve with in the state legislature. You know, Matt and I, when we were in the House together, didn't agree on many issues. But to his credit, I got a call from now County Commissioner Matt Lundy, who used to be a journalist. He said, "Hey, Josh, I see what you're doing in Columbus. Why don't we partner on this? I'd love to get Lorain County's finances online." And I'm telling you, I stood there with 3 Democratic county commissioners, me as a Republican, announcing, this is a few months ago, that Lorain County was one of the first counties to put their finances online. And so big counties and small, big cities and small. Is Georgine Wheelo here? Georgine was the first mayor in Cuyahoga County, Mayor of South Euclid, to announce to put their finances online. And today we're excited to make 2 new announcements in Cuyahoga County. The city of Euclid today is becoming the largest city in Cuyahoga County to put their finances online. Is anyone here from Euclid? And the city of North Royalton is announcing to put their finances online, following the North Royalton schools and the Cuyahoga Heights schools that became the first 2 school districts in Cuyahoga County to put their finances online. And so one of the things you might take from all this is, when I say this is not a Democratic or Republican issue, we mean it. This is one of those few issues in government today that can really bring people together. Most of you probably don't follow politics in Columbus. Frankly, my wife and I and our kids, we still live here in the Cleveland area, so I don't follow a lot of the local politics in Columbus either. But one thing I did follow was this. For the first time in, I think, over 15 years, Michael Coleman, who's the mayor of Columbus, decided he's not going to run. So for the first time in about 15 years, there's an open mayor's race in Columbus. They had the primary for this mayor's race about 2 months ago. Who can guess what the voter turnout was? Now remember, 15 years, first time in 15 years that the voters really had a choice. So you'd think there'd be pretty high voter turnout. Who's got to guess what the turnout was? 20%. It was about 9%. So think about that for a second. 9 out of 10 voters in Columbus threw their hands in the air and said, it just doesn't matter. The system's broken. It's not working for me. And so what you're looking at here, this OhioCheckbook.com, this transparency movement, because that's what it is, it's a movement, is one variable, one vehicle that can really help us renew faith in our democratic system. That can say to people that today might feel powerless, tomorrow we're going to make you powerful. We're going to give you the power to hold politicians accountable. And my message to all these mayors and city councilmen and school board members and county officials throughout the state of Ohio, and also the university presidents, and also the pension funds, is very simple. You've got a choice. Because 10 years ago, in order to go to the bank, you had to go to the bank. Today, in order to go to the bank, you just got to flip your phone on in your kitchen. So the choice is this: mayors, city councilmen, township trustees, county officials, university presidents, pension boards. Do you want to be Blockbuster Video? Or do you want to be Netflix? Do you want to be taxi cabs? Or do you want to be Uber? Because the reality is this: the ground is shifting beneath us. Times are changing. And while today this might seem as something that's nice to have, that citizens might say, hey, this is pretty cool, we can access the information, we could hold politicians accountable. Today they might see it as something nice to have. I'm telling you, mark my words, within a few years from now, citizens are going to demand it. They're going to say, I demand to see how this tax money is being spent. So all these elected officials watching here on TV or listening on the radio or here in the audience today, my charge to you is, get in front of the parade. Be a leader. Be at the tip of the spear. Recognize the fact that this is public information. The taxpayers have a right to know how this money is being spent. And all we're doing here is leveraging technology to put this information online and empower everyday citizens to hold public officials accountable. That's what the City Club's about. In my mind, that's what the City Club's about. And when you think back hundreds of years in this country, that's a great tradition we have. Empowering everyday citizens to hold their elected leaders accountable. So for that reason, I'm very thankful to Dan and the board for inviting me here to speak. I'm thankful to legislators like Mike Davila, who are really leaders on this issue, Nan Baker, John Eklund, who left, but also my friends on the other side of the aisle, Kevin Boyce and other leaders who've really done just that. They've led when it comes to government transparency. So I thank you very much. As I said, we're just getting started. We're setting off a national race for transparency here, and I very much hope to make you proud. Thank you very much.
Excellent work. Excellent work. I'm going to do a little pivot to the Q&A. Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Moulthrop, Chief Executive here at the City Club. We're enjoying a great forum featuring Ohio Treasurer Josh Mandel. I've already tweeted out one picture of a check, by the way. Thank you. We encourage you to organize your questions for our speaker now and remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point. And if you're joining us via our webcast and would like to tweet a question, please tweet it at the City Club. We welcome all of you here and those joining us via our web stream, which is provided by our primary media partner, 90.3 WCPN, WVIZ PBS, 104.9 WCLV Idea Stream, or one of the many, and we welcome you also if you are tuning in to our Friday forums on one of the many radio stations across the region or country that carry City Club programs. Television, radio, and web production and distribution is made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Be sure to join us this Friday, August 14th, as we welcome Judy Langford, Senior Fellow and Associate Director at the Center for the Study of Social Policy, as part of our series on family resiliency. For more information about any of our upcoming or any of our past forums, please visit us online at cityclub.org. Our sponsor for today's forum is the Northeast Ohio Media Group. They are our sponsor of all politics and policy programming. We thank you very much for your support. And our community partners for today's forum are the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland and Open NEO. We thank you both for your support. Additionally, we welcome guests at tables hosted by Calfee, Halter, and Griswold, LLP, Cleveland Clinic, Lynch for Congress 2016, Bruce Mandel, and Winfield Associates. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Now, it's time for our traditional City Club Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding our microphones today are Director of Programming, Stephanie Jansky, and Content Associate, Teddy Eisenberg. First question, please.
Well, since we've been looking at technology, we'll take the first question from Twitter. And this is from Ben Clark, who wants to know, does OhioCheckbook.com allow for API connectivity?
What is API connectivity?
Oh, gosh. I was hoping you would know that. It says, letting the public to create new uses of data could be transformative. I was hoping you would know. Well, I guess we don't
I got enough acronyms in the Marine Corps. I hung up a lot of the acronyms after that.
Do you have one?
Ma'am.
We're going to take one.
Okay.
Hi, so this seems incredibly revolutionary, but have any other states wanted to create a similar system, or has there been a reluctance similar to what you expressed in Columbus?
That's a good question. So Catherine mentioned U.S. Public Interest Research Group, which evaluates states around the country on the extent to which taxpayers can file their money. And so different states have done different things. Some of them have just made PDFs and tossed them online, which, as you know, are essentially useless. I mean, it's tough to really to search $473 billion of spending on a PDF. And so there are some other states that are doing good things, and we encourage them. There's no state doing what we're doing. I mean, we're really setting a new national standard for government transparency. As Catherine mentioned, when we started this thing, we were ranked 46 in the country. As of the new ranking a few months ago, we're now ranked number 1 in the country. And so my hope is that we'll get outdone. My hope is that by our setting the example here in Ohio, that some other state treasurer or governor or legislator in another state will outdo us. And it'll really be just that, a national race for transparency. And so I don't have any pride in authorship. I mean, I spoke at the National Association of State Treasurers. I presented a similar presentation to what you're seeing today to this group of state treasurers from around the country and said, let me help you do the same thing. In D.C., I spoke to a group called the Data Transparency Coalition, which is a coalition of state, local, and federal folks who care about government transparency. I've spoken to a lot of other organizations that care about it. Catherine's organization is one of them. I mentioned Greg Lawson, who's here from the Buckeye Institute. Now, let me tell you something. The Buckeye Institute, this is a conservative think tank. Catherine's group, not so much. To see Greg and Catherine standing shoulder to shoulder at a press conference, this doesn't happen every day. And so when we announced this thing for local government, in my office in Columbus, there they were standing right next to us. Keith Rathbun, where's Keith? So Keith's here. He's the incoming president of the Ohio Newspaper Association Board of Trustees. We've worked with the Ohio Newspaper Association, specifically their executive director, Dennis Hetzel. They've been incredible because this is a great tool for investigative journalists. I was talking with, is it Mary Kilpatrick? I was talking with Mary from the Plain Dealer earlier before I walked in here, and we were just talking about how this is a tool for journalists. It's not just for citizen watchdogs, it's for investigative journalists. You think about if you're a writer in Columbus at the State House News Bureau, and let's say you want to see if a certain construction company in Cleveland is doing business with state government. A year ago, before we launched this, there was no way to find that information out except for doing a public records request of every single agency in state government. Now you can just type that construction company or consulting company or law firm right in here, and you can you can see all of that information right from your desk at the Plain Dealer down the street or from their news bureau in Columbus. The Ohio Society of CPAs have also been integral in our coalition. I think there's a table here of CPAs. I don't know where the table is. Okay, in the back there. So Paul Etzler is here, Bob Bozek, Bill Shorba, and Eileen Sass. And I know Kimball Rubin's here and other folks who've been strong supporters of this initiative. So we appreciate this broad coalition in Ohio, and that's helped us project the importance of this nationally as well. And the League of Women Voters, who's also sponsoring our lunch today, has been very helpful as well. I don't know if there's a League of Women Voters table here, but I know they've been very integral in the process.
Josh, over here.
Where are we?
Right here.
Yes.
So, as a candidate for city council in Strongsville, a city that's not on the OhioCheckbook.com, as I've talked to voters, it's a home run. I mean, they want to have this online. They want to see how their cities are spending their tax dollars, and I'm pushing for that in my campaign. But have you seen a very enthusiastic response from cities across Ohio? And if you haven't, why do you think there's a hesitation for cities and mayors to put their checkbooks online like the state has?
It's a good question. So on April 18th, I sent a letter to all 18,000 city councilmen, mayors, school board members, county commissioners, county officials, university president. I mean, everyone's gotten letters from me. Basically said, hey, we did this at the state level. Why don't you do it with your local government checkbooks as well? And what we told them was this: we'll do it at no cost to your city, your school, your county. All you have to do is email us the information. And so, I just announced the city of Euclid. They agreed today to put their finances online. Is Michael Slocum here from Eastlake? So today also the city of Eastlake, that's another city we're announcing today, agreed to put their finances online. Michael's the finance director. Is Bruce Campbell here from North Royalton? There's Bruce in the back. In the city of North Royalton today is agreeing to put their finances online. Anyone here from Perry, Public Library, the township, in the back there? So you Christine? All right, I've heard good things about you. So Christine's the fiscal officer there. They're out in Lake County, and they've agreed to put their finances online, so on and so forth. And so your question is, why are some of them doing it, and why are some of them dragging their feet? I think technology, sometimes to certain people, obviously not to me, but certain people can be uncomfortable. And it can give people some pause and some concern. And so I had a choice. I had a fork in the roads. I could have either approached the local governments, the elected officials, with sugar or spice. I could have come in guns blazing and said, we demand you put your finances online. If you don't, I'm going to show up on the front hall of city steps doing a press conference and asking you what you have to hide. So that's one approach. The other approach is the approach we ended up taking, which is one of creating partnerships. Saying to local elected officials, we want to partner with you. We want to help you look good. We want to help you empower the taxpayers in your community to see how the money's being spent. And that's the approach we've taken. I think the approach is working relatively well so far. As of today, we have 253 local governments and school districts throughout the state of Ohio that have agreed to put their finances online, and that's since mid-April. And we're in discussions with about 335 other local governments and school districts. So out of the roughly 3,962 total local governments and school districts, we already have over 500 either committed or we're in discussions with them. And so I think this thing's on a good path. And what I've said to my staff is we don't have to get to all 3,900 plus to get to all 3,900 plus. We just have to get to a tipping point. And once we reach that tipping point, whether it's 1,000 local governments or 1,500 local governments, eventually it's going to just start getting uncomfortable. And if you're a city councilman who is surrounded by other cities, or you're a school board member that's surrounded by other school districts that have their finances online, eventually your constituents are going to start showing up at city council meetings and school board meetings and saying, hey, Councilman Zimmerman in the back there in Shaker Heights, when are we going to get Shaker Heights' finances online? Yes. Yeah. Where's the next question?
Right over here.
All right, shoot it.
Clearly, there's a certain amount of information that won't be part of the OhioCheckbook.com site. So I was wondering if you could tell us how many days should it take for a public official to respond to a public records request? And could you give us a specific number of days, please?
Sure. So that's a better question for the State Attorney General. The State Attorney General handles a lot of those things. I think a lot of it probably hinges upon the information that someone's requesting. And so why don't you give me your cell phone number, and I'll give you mine after, and then I can contact the Attorney General's office and try to get you a more specific number of what they advise folks. I'd be glad to do that.
From your perspective, is there a range of days? Is there a range of days that you think, on average?
Again, it depends on a case-by-case basis. So I wouldn't feel comfortable answering a hypothetical without having a specific request in front of me. So I think it's a really intelligent question, and it's germane to this conversation. I just would feel more comfortable asking the Attorney General and getting an answer. But I take pride in being responsive, and so if you give me your cell phone, I'll be glad to give them a call this afternoon. Thank you. In the front here.
Josh, so we got to do it on the mic.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. All right.
Hi,
All right,
Holly
good.
Thacker, Cuyahoga Heights Schools. As an elected school board member who was involved in finding millions of dollars worth of embezzlement and fraud in the school system, I certainly would have liked to have had this a lot sooner, because I think the transparency of the checks, when you keep seeing recurrent checks to questionable vendors, that obviously raises red flags. So that's wonderful. However, my question is, transparency is one thing. What about the second part about responsibility? Because just because it's out there doesn't mean that the money's not going to be inappropriately spent. And how do we know that our fiscal officers are putting that information in the system correctly so that it can be searched and identified?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I want to recognize Holly and her colleagues in the Cuyahoga Heights schools. Holly stood with me. I think we did that joint press conference in North Royalton. Hey. From North Royalton here as well. All right, great. So this was, I think, it was the Thursday before July 4th weekend. I appreciate you guys being here. So it's a good question you ask, the integrity of the data, the integrity of the information. At some point in time, we have to have trust in the actual fiscal officer who's entering the information. I mean, if there is a fiscal officer at a school level or at the city level that is breaking the law, I would hope that the justice process and the auditing process would work and hold them accountable. I know that's what eventually happened in Cuyahoga Heights, but that's why we have a state auditor, and every year the state auditor audits the books of cities, counties, school districts, state agencies, to try to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. And so, we have to trust that process. I mean, if there's a fiscal officer in a school district or a city that's just lying or lining their own pockets, I think eventually they're going to get caught. But this website, I think, is a deterrent to those types of people. It's a deterrent to the unfortunate goings-on that we saw in Cuyahoga County with the entire corruption scandal that happened here in Cuyahoga County, and then also in local governments and school districts as well. And I'm not saying that this would have stopped all that stuff, but I think it could help to be a deterrent towards that type of corruption and also just general waste in government.
With the goal of transparency in mind, can you tell me if the expenditures for Jobs Ohio is listed on the website?
That's a great question. I actually called on Jobs Ohio to put their information on here. I want Jobs Ohio's information to be online. I called on them publicly to put their information online. I went and met with their executive director and their board, and they refused to put the information online. And I think it's wrong. I think we as taxpayers have a right to see how that money in Jobs Ohio is being spent. And I hope they change their mind. The legislature has made it clear that by law that information is not a matter of public record. I personally believe that we as taxpayers have a right to see how the money is being spent because of the derivation of the money. And so my hope is that we can prevail upon them and convince them to put that information online. For those of you here in the audience or those watching at home who are unfamiliar with Jobs Ohio, this is a outside of government, not-for-profit entity that was created for the purposes of economic development in the state of Ohio. And there's a lot of us on both sides of the aisle that believe that we as taxpayers have a right to know how the money's being spent in there.
Josh, quick two-parter. First, you said it took 18 months to build the site. How much approximately did it cost?
So this cost about $814,000 to build, and we believe that it will pay for itself in relatively short time because the benefit that taxpayers receive by being able to hold public officials accountable and the changes in behavior among the public officials that will stop wasteful spending, that benefit far outweighs the cost.
So as I'm sitting here looking at this, I think it's a good thing. I haven't spent a whole lot of time. This is most of the time I've ever spent looking at it. Could the state of Ohio not license this technology to other states? Keep it free for Ohio governments, but then say, hey, Michigan, it's going to cost you $10 per citizen per year?
It's an interesting idea.
Because otherwise they're going to have to go spend, millions of dollars to build it. So just license the technology.
It's a very
Profit
interesting
center.
idea.
Hi, good afternoon. First off, thank you, Treasurer Mandel,
No
for
problem.
putting this together. I think it's a great resource. I have two quick questions. The first one is, as a taxpayer, one of the issues I'm most passionate about is double dipping, the practice known as retire, rehire. And in 2010, Ohio News Association did some research, and they discovered that 1/4 of superintendents were double dippers. And this was back in 2010. And I'm sure that the number has increased since then. So the first part of my question is there a way on ohiocheckbook.com to find out who is drawing both a pension and a salary at the same time, as well as if there would be a list by job or industry of what that person is doing? And then the second question that I have is on the bottom half of the page, if you could scroll down, there was a really interesting category called Highest Paid Companies of 2015. And I was wondering if you can kind of talk about that category, if that includes all states or just Ohio, because I noticed Ohio is well represented in the top 5. So I was curious if you could talk about that category.
Sure. Two good questions. So first question on double dipping. I think this double dipping is a scam. I'm against it. I think it's offensive that when a public official can, quote unquote, retire on a Friday and then gets rehired on a Monday, getting paid their full salary and their benefits, essentially gets a 70% pay increase over the weekend, it doesn't change jobs, that's offensive. But you know what? The law needs to change. The people who are taking advantage of it, they're following the law. And so what's necessary here, what's needed here is the legislature needs to change the law. Legislature needs to end double dipping. And for any legislators listening or watching at home, I would be glad to stand with you shoulder to shoulder at that press conference and help with that process because I think the whole concept of double dipping is it's just offensive and it's wrong and it's not fiscally responsible. As far as the second part of the question, and you asked, is it on here? It's not on here. Eventually, we'd like to get there. And so there's a lot of things I'd like to do with this that we haven't done yet. And so another sort of like lesson learned from the rollout of the Obamacare website is walk before you run. This isn't an editorial about Obamacare specifically. I personally opposed it. It's really more an editorial on any government-type website. Don't launch it until it's ready. And then also, another lesson learned is it's okay to hit singles and doubles before you hit a home run. And so that's what we've tried to do here is just hit singles and doubles, do a good job, and then build upon it over time. And so what you're mentioning there is something we'd like to do eventually. Secondly, you asked about the section of the website that includes highest paid companies. So here you see the highest paid company in the state of Ohio is United Healthcare Group, over $300 million last year. Next, Shelley and Sands, that does road construction. After that, Kokosing, which does road construction. After that, Medical Mutual, health insurance. And then Shelley Companies, which does road construction, so on and so forth. So you can click on any of these. Why don't you click on Shelley and Sands there. And this shows you total spending over the past 8 fiscal years, going back from 2008. As you can see, there's a general increase in what the state of Ohio is spending with them over the past 8 years. Why don't you click on last fiscal year, 2015. Our fiscal years, for those of you not familiar with Ohio's fiscal years, we're like a July 1st, June 30th fiscal year here in the state of Ohio. So this shows you the road construction expenditures with the state. We can click on one of these. My guess is most of it would be either Department of Transportation or Department of Natural Resources. And these are all the expenditures. And why don't you click on one of these expenditures? And there's the check. This one was for construction, road, and highways. And so your question, I think, was, does it include highest paid companies just for Ohio or for the whole country? It's just Ohio. The information on here is just spending. It's just money that's appropriated by the General Assembly. And so in Columbus, it does not include any of the other 49 states.
Thank you.
Yep. Question in the back?
Hi, Josh.
Oh, hey there.
Since the tax revolts of the 1970s, a lot of spending has been pushed to the tax side through tax expenditures, tax cuts, those kind of things. One of the things in Ohio that we have is a tax expenditure budget, which in the last fiscal year was about $8 billion. That doesn't seem to be present in Ohio Checkbook. And that's an area where it would be really great to have a lot more transparency, to be able to see where other types of spending is happening and people really know what's going on. So do you have plans to expand? If not, why not?
Yeah, so great question. So the question speaks to tax expenditures, usually in the form of some type of economic development, as the proponents of that would argue. There are, within the Department of Taxation here on the website, expenditures under that umbrella. So we do have some of the tax expenditures on here. It's not as in-depth as I'd like to get. And so the answer to your question is yes, we'd eventually like to get there and show specific tax expenditures to the extent they're public record. For certain individuals, it's not a matter of public record. And so it's going back to your question earlier, this is something with which that we would consult with the Attorney General's offices on and really determine what's a matter of public record and what's not in respect to tax expenditures. We spent a lot of time when building this on ensuring that we protected confidential personal information. So any of your account numbers, Social Security numbers, your personal tax information is not on here. To your question, though, one of the items that offends the sensibility oftentimes of people on the left and the right is that concept of corporate welfare or crony capitalism. And so you can see a lot of that showcased here on this website. And so I'll show you, for instance, why don't you type in Frito-Lay. Click on 2014. This is a check from the Development Services Agency, which is a state agency that does economic development in the state, for $500,000, a grant, basically giving away your tax money to Frito-Lay. They make really good potato chips, but at the end of the day, is it a good use of our tax money to be giving $500,000 to Frito-Lay? My personal feeling is, and this is a larger conversation and not the topic of today, rather than have all these different programs where they're giving $500,000 here to Frito-Lay and $500,000 there to other large companies, we should be creating a better tax environment for small businesses in our state. Because all this is the redistribution of wealth from smaller businesses and individuals to large multinational companies. I don't think that benefits Ohio in the long term. I don't think that benefits our country in the long term. And so I want to get eventually where you are, where you targeted your question. We're not there yet, but there is a lot of stuff on here if you look, especially with some of the economic development stuff that you can find of how tax money is used in the form of quote-unquote economic development. I don't know any of the details about this specific one, Frito-Lay, but I can tell you that there's a lot of folks who own restaurants and pizza shops and other small businesses right here in the state of Ohio that probably would have a very difficult time affording the amount of lawyers and accountants and compliance officers it took for Frito-Lay to apply for this economic development grant. And so I don't think the system is really structured in a way that's fair across the board, especially to small businesses. I keep calling on people, but then missing the mic. All right. Sir.
Hi, Josh. Skip Claypool, Commissioner out of Geauga County.
Hey, Skip.
Your message and your tone is very, very refreshing.
Thanks.
And I really like hearing what you have to say. By the way, you do have an API in the system. It's an up API, the down API, because information travels both ways. I'm not sure about the downside, but you do have an up application programming interface, just for whatever that's worth.
I get taken to school every day on something.
Yeah,
so.
I'm an IT guy by background. So in any case, two-part question. Geauga County has put our name into the list. I'd like to talk to somebody about what it takes to move that name up the list a little bit, because we're excited about what we're seeing here. The second question for you.
Just so I understand, so Geauga County did sign up, or?
Yeah, I believe we have. Yes, we put our name into the list.
That's great.
I will check when I get back to the office.
I'm sorry I didn't recognize you earlier. That's news to me, and
that's,
that's great. You guys are doing that. Thank you.
And I'd like to do what I need to do to help move that along a little bit. But what is your thought? What is your plan for putting organizations that are not direct governmental organizations, Council on Governments, I'll use NOACA as an example, reaching out to them and having their finances put into the system? What is your thought on that?
Well, we're reaching out to all government agencies, so Northeast Ohio Sewer District, libraries, all those for sure. NOACA, how are they structured? Do they have 501c3 or they? I understand that, but how are they? What's the actual structure of the organization? Is it a governmental entity or is it a 501? Okay. Okay. So are they federal highway dollars? I mean, if they're strictly funded by tax money, yeah, I think they should be online. I mean, if it's funded by tax money, local, state, federal, put it online. I mean, that's my feeling. To be honest, it's the first I've been asked that question, so I'm glad to work with you and Jill and others after this meeting who seem more knowledgeable than me on that specific organization and work to get their finances online. Is anyone here from that organization? So put me in touch with them. I mean, glad to start the conversation. Yeah, I'm spending a lot of time personally with local government leaders, state government leaders, and other leaders in government to try to convince them, bring them along, hold their hand to put the finances online, so I'm glad to work with them as well. I feel the cane coming on here, so.
Well, today we really enjoyed this program, and I wanted to say thank you very much to Treasurer Mandel. Ladies and gentlemen, our forum is now adjourned.